Welcome to the Explainer. In a world that's just constantly screaming for your attention, it's so easy to feel like you're not really in the driver's seat of your own mind. Well, today we're breaking down a framework to change all that. It's called Cognitive Dominance Architecture, and think of it as a way to upgrade your mental operating system for, well, peak performance.
All right, so let's dive right in, and we're going to start with a really core conflict, a fundamental split in how a mind can even operate. See, on one side, you've got the follower. This is the mind that just waits. It's waiting for instructions from the media, from your boss, from whatever's trending. But then, on the other side, you've got the leader, the mind that generates its own commands right from an internal source of authority.
And right away, this whole framework challenges you with a really direct question. Think about it. Are you the shepherd or are you the sheep? Which one of those two states really describes your default mode? Are you the one guiding the action, or are you just being herded along? The entire architecture we're about to unpack is all about making that decisive shift from one column to the other.
Okay, so let's get into our first upgrade. This is all about making that absolutely critical shift from obedience to command. This is the foundation, right? Building that unwavering internal authority.
So to really get this, we have to look at this fascinating theory from Julian Jaynes called the Bicameral Mind. He basically suggested that ancient humans weren't conscious like we are today. Instead of having an internal monologue, that little voice in your head, they experienced what they felt were external commands, the voices of gods, which they just obeyed. Jaynes argues that what we call modern consciousness, that single internal voice we think of as me, was actually born from silencing those external voices and becoming our own internal commander.
So that's the theory. But how do we actually apply this ancient idea today? Well, the tactical application is pretty straightforward. First, you have to consciously adopt the mindset of the shepherd, never the sheep. Second, you've got to identify and just mentally demolish those modern hallucinated authority figures. I'm talking about the constant noise from your social media feed, the 24-hour news cycle, even societal expectations telling you what to think. The whole point is to get to a state where you generate your own commands, not just passively receive them.
All right, on to the second upgrade. So once you've established yourself as the sole authority, the next step is to start refining the system you're actually using. This section is all about reframing your brain as a programmable biocomputer that you can actively debug. This is a really powerful idea from a scientist named John C. Lilly. He saw the brain as biological hardware, or as he called it, wetware. He suggested that our beliefs, our habits, they're essentially programmed loops, and a lot of them were installed by other people without us even realizing it. So to optimize your performance, you have to basically go into debug mode. You got to uninstall the bloatware, all that fear and self-doubt, and install some new powerful killer apps, like say Stoic Logic or Radical Discipline.
And this quote right here just perfectly captures the core principle of metaprogramming. Whatever the thinker thinks, the prover proves. I want you to think of your mind as having two parts. You've got the thinker that gives the order, and then you've got the prover that just loyally goes out and finds evidence to back it up. So if you think I'm not good enough for that promotion, your mind will prove it by focusing on every single mistake you make. But, and this is the key, if you think you're the best candidate, it'll work just as hard to prove that's true. So if you look at it this way, you can actually run a diagnostic on yourself. This slide gives you a little taste of what that might look like. You can start to identify these active vulnerabilities. Things like risk aversion, which is basically a legacy script we inherited from our ancestors, or emotional lag, which creates a delay in execution, or a big one, validation seeking, which creates this really dangerous external dependency.
And look, once you start rewriting your mental code, you absolutely have to protect it. The framework calls this the encryption protocol, or kind of like a code of silence. What this means is you don't go around talking about your new goals or your new mindset with people who might try to inject doubt viruses. No. You just quietly do the work and protect your new operating system while it's still booting up.
Okay, our third and final upgrade. This one takes our newly sovereign and optimized mind and puts it in the right environment. And this involves fundamentally changing how you see everything: time, opportunity, even reality itself.
This is based on something called novelty theory. And the core idea is that history isn't just some boring straight line. It's more like an accelerating wave of complexity, or what the theory calls novelty. Just think about the pace of change now compared to, say, 100 years ago. The crucial insight here is that the biggest opportunities, they aren't in the stable, predictable center of things. Nope. They are out on the chaotic fringe, where the future is literally being born.
And this slide visualizes that idea just perfectly.
See how it shows time not as a flat line, but as this rising, accelerating wave? The past, way over on the left, that's all about dying, static systems. But as you move towards the future on the right, that wave of novelty gets steeper and way more chaotic. A strategic player doesn't hang out in the flatlands. They position themselves right on that steep, accelerating curve, ready to ride the wave of change.
So, how do you actually operate in an environment that's so chaotic? It's all about the story you tell yourself. As this slide shows, a weak narrative looks at a complex situation and just sees a scary mess. But a strong, transcendental narrative, it reframes that exact same chaos as simply a pattern you don't recognize yet. And that little shift allows you to position yourself to act the moment that pattern finally becomes clear. You're literally using language to define your reality.
Okay, let's bring it all together in our final section and see how these 3 upgrades, your internal authority, a debugged OS, and operating on the fringe, combine into one cohesive operational strategy.
So, the fully upgraded system, what this framework calls the modern prince, keeps a constant readiness report on its key assets. And you can see they're perfectly balanced. 1/3 is internal governance, making sure you are the sole authority. 1/3 is system optimization, making sure your mental code is running clean and efficient. And the final third is market positioning, ensuring you are operating right where that novelty is highest.
An individual like this doesn't have one fixed way of being. They're fluid. They are constantly analyzing the environment, then they adjust their operational stance based on what they see, and only then do they execute their grand strategy. It's this constant cycle: perception, adaptation, and then action. And this slide just brilliantly visualizes the 2 primary stances you have available. On one side, you've got the stoic, which is your defensive posture. This is all about enduring hardship, protecting your resources, and just patiently waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And then on the other side, you've got the savage, your offensive posture. This is about taking what you want through direct, decisive action and sheer force of will. So here's the crucial takeaway, the thing to really remember. True cognitive dominance, it isn't about being permanently aggressive or permanently defensive. It's about being the strategist, the one who has mastered both. The ultimate question this framework leaves us with isn't which one are you, it's which one does this moment demand you become.